I'm a massive UFC fan. In fact, the sport of MMA has become my go-to sport over the past couple of years. It's even surpassed the sport that I played and I was brought up on, rugby league. I played it for 17 years, and although I love it and I still enjoy it, you just cannot beat MMA as a sport and the UFC as an organization. It is by far the best sport in the world. Nothing comes close. The sheer power, the athleticism, the skill, the nuance that's involved in the jiu-jitsu on the ground and the wrestling from the... Mate, it is the best sport in the world without a doubt. The men and women who enter the octagon are unmatched by any other athletes. There is no sport in the world, to my knowledge, that is so shocking and so human, so raw, and so entertaining. And I'm not alone with this thought. In my country of Australia, MMA as a sport and the UFC as an organisation is just going from strength to strength. So many people love this sport. All you have to do is look at the weigh-ins from the recent card that happened in Perth. There's thousands of people there just to watch the fighters weigh in for a few minutes. People love this sport here. And it probably won't shock you that the event in Perth sold out in a matter of hours. People lapped up those tickets. They needed them, particularly after the UFC hadn't been here in a number of years because of a certain illness that we won't talk about because this video will then get demonetized. And the people who attended that event were not disappointed. It was a great card with a lot of great Aussie and Kiwi fighters on the card. And of course, Alexander the Great Volkanovski, he defeated Islam Makhachev. According to me, he did anyway. One judge skewed that opinion and Islam won. But as an Australian, congratulations, Volk. A great win. The pound for pound champ. Double champ. Well, it should be anyway. And that event itself wasn't the only event in Australia to sell out and set records. The world record for a UFC event was set in Melbourne a few years ago when Ronda Rousey got knocked out by Holly Holm. And I thought we may never see another event here because I spoke with Dana White last year over in Florida in the early part of last year, and he said, mate, with all these cancellations of events in Australia, everyone's freaking out about the spicy cough. You know, can we fly all the fighters there? Can we risk all that money just to have it cancelled? So who knew if the sport was coming back anytime soon or not? But if you're a fan of the UFC or sport in general, I have some information in this video that's going to give you the shits. It's going to shock you and it should upset you because it really, really pissed me off. You may have noticed that for the past decade, there has not been a UFC event in Sydney or in New South Wales. There just hasn't. Prior to that, there were quite a few. So the question is, why hasn't there been another event? I believe that I may have the answer. And the answer is this, and I'll allow my good friend Friendly Geordies to give you the answer. The Liberal Cabinet! The Liberals, who are the right-wing or centre-right-wing party here in Australia, are not the federal government in charge, but they are in charge of a few states throughout Australia, namely New South Wales, the state with the highest population and the home of Sydney, right? They have been in power for over a decade here, and the UFC hasn't been here for a decade. So is there something going on there? Is there? Well, I have the inside word. Recently, I went to Sydney to interview Alexander Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev prior to their UFC fight. It was a great interview. Everyone was laughing, having a good time. And then I interviewed Islam, whose face looked like this for the entire fucking time. And I even managed to make him laugh. Go me. The interview was great. Unfortunately, and this was a real shame, the time period when the interview was due to go out, I was cancelled that week, so it never saw the light of day. I also didn't go to the UFC in Perth, which was a real shame. I had tickets, had everything booked, but during the cancellation, the amount of death threats, and I'm happy to receive death threats, I've been doing that for a long time, the amount of death threats and threats of violence that my very pregnant wife received, mate, I just thought to myself, like, what is it really worth the risk? As much as I want to go and watch this fight, all it takes for one dickhead is to carry on or go through with a threat, and even towards me, and I bump into Claire and shit, mate, it's just not worth it. So we didn't go. It really astounds me how weak a lot of people are. Like, this whole death threat thing because of a joke is just hilarious. Like, imagine being that much of a weak piece of shit that you can't deal with that. Anyway, I digress. On the day I interviewed both the fighters, we went through the interview, we had a big chat, we're talking to the coaches, having a good old time, and then there was a bit of a commotion. Because in walks the opposition leader in the New South Wales election race, basically the guy in charge now, the Premier, Dominic Perrottet. He is like the governor in America, and this guy is running for the governor, or running for the premiership, the whole fucking thing. Who knows? Something's happening. Anyway, this guy called Chris Minns, he walks in. And everyone's like, oh my God, and he comes in with a big entourage and photographers and a media person telling him to talk about this and say this. It's all interesting to be behind the scenes in that regard. We have a talk, we have a chat, probably about 10 minutes, and he's actually not a bad dude. Didn't mind him at all. And the reason he was there is he wants to bring 3 fights to Sydney, New South Wales, over the next few years, and if he wins, and I think that's a really great thing. We went on and talked for a while until my beautiful wife Claire decided to crack a hilarious joke, which I thought was fantastic. Chris Minns didn't think it was a fantastic joke. In fact, he freaked out and basically ran away from both of us. Claire said to him, because Dominic Perrottet, the other dude, recently somebody said that he was wearing a Nazi uniform at his 21st birthday, and he came out and had a press conference and apologised, and I don't know, people dress up as weird things, who gives a shit? Anyway, Claire said to Chris Minns, hey mate, good luck, hope you don't dress up as a Nazi anytime soon, and he freaked the fuck out and had to leave. But not before one of his aides, or his ministers, a lady, I'm not sure who it was, said something very interesting to me about the Liberal Party and the UFC. I mentioned to her how great it would be to see more of these UFC main events come to Sydney. And she said words to the effect of, you're not going to get that under the current government. And I said, what do you mean by that? She then told me, and I can't remember exactly the organisation, whether it's New South Wales Sport or the Sport Minister or something like that, they have basically decreed, they've declared that, and I quote, this is what she told me, it is not on brand for New South Wales to have the UFC here. Not on brand for an entire state. How about fuck off? Who the fuck are you, you pricks with a god complex? Don't tell me what I can and can't like, you fucks. Who the fuck are you to tell me what I can and can't enjoy? This is ridiculous. And when Chris Minns came out and did this whole press conference thing and a press release and talking about he wants more events in Sydney, and of course the Liberals come out, they have a crack at him in the press through the most atrocious means, and this is what I assume happened anyway, but this came out the next day. Minns, UFC pledge, counterproductive to addressing domestic violence. Fuck off, you clutching at straws fucks. So football's okay, boxing's okay, you're allowed to drink as much piss as you want, you can gamble as much as you want, but UFC, 2 athletes who train all their lives to get into a cage and punch on, that's bringing on domestic violence, is it? Fuck you to the moon. New South Wales opposition leader Chris Minns says a Labor government would spend 16 mil to lure 3 UFC fights to Sydney, prompting a rebuke. A rebuke? Must be serious. From women's safety advocates who have warned against glorifying violence. This is gross. It has to be the Liberals, right? They have to be saying, yeah, we really need to get this story in the paper. Just basically, Chris has said something good. People want the UFC here. Let's go and just destroy it for all these fucking old, fucking boring voters that vote for us. And, we'll fuck with him a little bit on that. And they bring women's safety into it because that's what they think people want to hear. Fuck off. Minns said the fights would attract visitors and worldwide exposure to Sydney. But Hayley Foster, Chief Executive of Women's Counselling Service Full Stop, said the strategy would not aid in the reduction of violence across New South Wales. It won't increase it, it won't reduce it, it won't do a fucking thing because it's a sport. We have very problematic messaging that we're sending to men or boys in our communities around what it means to be a real man. Oh, okay, so the UFC's pushing what a real man is. Okay, what, are the women fighters just fucking invisible to you? I've been around a lot of MMA fighters and in MMA gyms. They're some of the most beautiful, most gentlemanly people in the entire world. You've got no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, there's some psychos, but there's psychos in every sport. There's psychos in every office. There's just psychos. And then this wanker, I don't even know who this dude is, but he just seems like the biggest fuckwit alive. Treasurer, Matt Keane said this: the coalition government would rather focus on other events, including the Women's FIFA World Cup. Labor's sad policy for events in New South Wales is a few cage fights. Yeah, the biggest and fastest growing sport in the world, you fucking dumb fuck. Ours has been and will be delivering great events like the Women's FIFA World Cup, the Netball World Cup, and World Pride 2023. Yeah, I'm sure heaps of people are pumped about the Women's World Cup and the fucking Netball World Champs and the Pride. Mate, you are talking out of your ass. You don't believe what you're saying. No one believes what you're saying. You are just saying what you think voters want to hear. You are not in connection with the community. You don't understand any of this. You absolute waste of space. So, what did I do with this information about, it not being on brand, allegedly? I went to the one person that could probably actually do with that information, UFC President Dana White. And I said to Dana, I explained the whole situation to him. And I won't go into his response. We had a good conversation about it. But basically, he was very aware. He was very aware. And I'll say this, not from Dana, not from the UFC, but from me. If you want to see more UFC events in Sydney, in New South Wales, then you should probably vote Labor, because under a Liberal government, you're fucked. So there you have it, you violent pieces of shit. Maybe it's time you started acting like the Liberals and stop enjoying such violent, disgusting sports like MMA and then instead watch the World Pride event. You fucking grubs. That's the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, fucking, I don't know, put a fucking smile on your face, whatever. If you're not subscribed, fucking commit to something in your life, you grub. Have a good day. Be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. Me dick stinks. Toodaloo. Au revoir. Bye-bye.